Now, the political spat about tax has raised a big question about who pays it, who doesn't, and who's taking action to make sure it's banked by the Treasury. Added to that, the Tory Treasurer, Lord Fink's statement funds to Switzerland was vanilla tax avoidance. Begs the question, where is the line to be drawn? We're joined now from Westminster by Emma Burnell, a columnist for Labour List, and Dr. Eamonn Butler from the Adam Smith Institute. Thank you both for joining us today. First of all, Emma Burnell, Ed Miliband's been swinging on this now for a couple of days. What's his motivation? What's he after?
Well, I think he's after fairness and equality. It's been central to Labour's message with most of the things that we've been talking about since Ed Miliband was elected and since before that. It's central to the mission of the Labour Party that we have a fair society where everyone gains and everyone pays in.
Is that something that needs to be fixed, Dr. Butler?
Yes, it does, but not by the sorts of solutions that politicians actually on both sides are proposing. We have a tax system which is one of the longest tax codes in the world. It's getting more and more complicated and even longer year by year. We need to simplify that. If we had simple taxes and low taxes, then people wouldn't seek to avoid them and couldn't avoid them.
To be fair, and we were talking about fairness, were we not, Emma Burnell, this coalition government has done quite a lot to tackle the issue of tax already, hasn't it? HMRC have been well supported to go after tax evaders, and also the government's been quite vocal about large international companies not paying taxes in the countries where they operate.
Well, they've been vocal, but they've actually cut a great deal of HMRC's ability to actually go after anybody, and they haven't actually done anything other than say, oh, it would be quite nice if you would do this, rather than actually doing their duty, which is to go out and actively get the taxes that are due to them. If you look at what happened at the agreement that they made with Switzerland, they actively said they would not seek the data. That doesn't seem like an aggressive strategy by any government to me.
Do you agree with that, Dr. Butler?
Oh, well, the data always comes out eventually. You can't actually keep these things very long. But no, HMRC has draconian powers, and it's just been given new powers to take money out of people's bank accounts without their permission. I think that's actually pretty outrageous. I think that's giving officials far too much power. No, what we need is a simple and fair system where everybody pays a low amount of tax and everybody pays the same tax, and that we don't have all of these complicated rules and regulations, because that simply drives people abroad. Companies, for example, have a duty to their shareholders to maximise the value of the company, and that's absolutely right. So why should they stick in rainy old Britain paying very high taxes when they can move their financial affairs somewhere else? That's perfectly legal. It's a free world. If you try to stop people moving to low tax jurisdictions, then our politicians could charge 100% tax. There'd be nothing to stop them.
Emma Burnell, the political side of this, and people do detect a whiff of politics in where Ed Miliband's going at the moment, swinging at wealthy Tory donors and complicated means of tax avoidance. But actually, truth of the matter is, tax avoidance is something that everybody does. Anyone who runs a company, anyone who's not paid PAYE has to make certain arrangements in terms of how much tax they pay and how much tax they don't feel they have to pay.
Only 9 million adults do their own tax return. The idea that we're all at it is an extraordinary idea that you could only believe if you were stratospherically unconnected with the reality of most people's lives.
I think I must be stratospherically unconnected, because when people pay into pensions, that's tax-free. When they take out an ISA, that's tax-free. People save in bricks and mortar. They save in their house because it's not taxed. If you put that money in the bank and made a capital gain, it would be taxed. If you put it into your house, you're not. Everybody actually does this on one form or another. And actually what we need is a very simple tax system where everything is taxed fairly and efficiently. And you don't get these sorts of distortions that people are now exploit.
I don't think an ISA is the same distortion as putting all your money in a Swiss bank account. There are vast differences between what we're talking about here and what people, which the idea that most people own their own home is actually also stratospherically unrealistic. But actually, those of us who are lucky enough to own our own home are not doing it for tax purposes. We're doing it because, unfortunately, our housing system, which is a debate for another day, is not set up to enable people to live properly.
Is there a line, Dr. Butler? Is there a line, Dr. Butler, where these things apply to those who are wealthy but don't apply to those who are not?
Well, no, I don't think you can draw any line at all. I mean, this is the Inland Revenue and Customs argument is that we'll decide how much tax somebody really ought to be paying, and then we'll force them to pay it. But you can arrange your affairs in 1,001 different ways, and you'll come up with 1,001 different answers as to how much tax you pay. As long as you are within the law and you're respecting the regulations, then that is perfectly legal. If you lie to the authorities and say, no, I don't have any earnings, I don't have any assets, that is illegal. And our politicians, I'm afraid, are confusing the two, suggesting that people who enter into reasonable tax avoidance schemes are somehow criminals, which they're not. It's very convenient for the politicians to mix those two things up, but I think it's immoral to do so.
Eamonn Butler, if you're rich...
criminality and immorality, and actually there is a sense of immorality with the way that people are playing the tax system and taking away from a state that has given them the roads that they drive on, the schools that their employees, at least, children go to. You know, this is tax is how we build a good society, and actually it's really important that those who are benefiting from that are giving back to it.
Eamonn Butler, is it immoral? Eamonn Butler, can I just ask you,
Yes.
Is it immoral to be wealthy?
Not at all. It's not immoral to be wealthy. It's not immoral to be poor either. It's not immoral. Immoral is to benefit from a system that you do not give back to.
Eamonn Butler, yes, one last word for you, Dr. Butler.
Half the nation's income goes in tax already. It's not immoral to make sure that you don't have to pay more tax than the law demands.
Dr. Butler and Eamonn Butler, we're out of time now. Thank you both for joining us this evening from a very chilly Abingdon Green for us tonight.
Thank you.
Now, there were cheers in an Egyptian courtroom today after two Al Jazeera journalists were freed on bail after more than a year in prison. Mohammed Fahmy and Baher Mohammed were held alongside colleague Peter Greste, who was freed last month, all facing charges of spreading lies about the government. Sky's Middle East correspondent Shireen Tadros now reports from Cairo.
A rare moment of joy in a courtroom that's witnessed much injustice. Al Jazeera English journalists, along with students caught up in the same case, were ordered released on bail. It's not quite a dismissal of the case, but it means they can now attend their retrial as free men. After more than a year behind bars, defendant Mohammed Fahmy's fiancée could hardly contain her emotions.
I can't wait to celebrate with him, have a proper dinner, go out, dance, enjoy music, enjoy life again. It's a rebirth for me and for Mohammed.
Producer Baher Mohammed's wife too seemed overwhelmed by the news.
I'm going to go home and tell my children their father's coming. We'll go buy new clothes and sweets, and then I'm going to pick up Baher myself.
The defendants have just been led out of their cages. They have been in prison for over 400 days. Now they've been granted bail. It's extremely rare in terrorism cases like these